At the dawn of the Fifth Astral Era, fledgling cities began to emerge. Over the next 2.5 centuries, their numbers would grow to 12, each paying tribute to a unique deity of the Eorzean pantheon. A group of Hjor settlers arrived in what is now known as the South Shroud. At the time, the region was an open plain dotted with massive outcrops of pale stone, notably lacking the dense forest canopy we now associate with the area. This abundance of stone allowed the settlers to erect remarkably sturdy structures. By the year 300, central Aldenard had transformed into a thriving metropolis, the city-state of Amdapor. The people of Amdapor revered Nafaka, the goddess of abundance, as their patron deity. Seeking communion with the enigmatic elementals of the Black Shroud, the Amdapori hoped to share in the forest bounty. But the elementals, ever wary of mankind, refused to interact with their new neighbors, content instead to keep their distance. The Amdapori, in turn, respected their wishes and refrained from encroaching upon the sacred forest, save for the occasional hunts that carried them across its borders. It is worth noting, however, that the elementals did not entirely shun outsiders. During this period, they maintained peaceful relations with the bird-like XIV tribes, who they deemed no threat to the natural balance of the forest. As Amdapor prospered, its people fortified their domain by constructing an immense stronghold atop a knoll just outside the city proper. While claiming to cherish harmony with nature and advocating peaceful coexistence, the Amdapori were keen to prepare for the world's growing instability. This philosophy of benevolence allowed neighboring societies to flourish alongside Amdapor. The city was viewed not as a threat, but as a wise elder watching over the other 11 city-states. Thus, it became known as the Ancient City. Despite Amdapor's ideals, the age was one of turmoil. City-states rose and fell with frequency, borders were redrawn without end, and smaller territories were often consumed by larger powers. By the 1000th year of the Fifth Astral Era, only 6 sovereign nations remained. Among them, 3 stood out: Amdapor, Nim, located on the Isle of Vilbrand, and Mhach, located in the western Yafayam region. In the era's latter centuries, these surviving powers would find themselves embroiled in a conflict unlike any before. Initially, Amdapor employed simple magics to strengthen their defenses, drawing upon the primitive craft of golemancy to animate statues of stone. But in the 9th century, the mages of Amdapor observed the dark rise of Mhach, its black mages wielding devastating spells to conquer their neighbors. Fearing Mhach's ambitions, the Amdapori turned inward and refined their own spellcraft, developing magics to purify, protect, and heal. From this came the birth of white magic. It is often said that without this discovery, Amdapor would have quickly fallen to Mhach. But with white magic came a power that could stand against the arcane might of the Machi's black magic. And so, an uneasy balance was struck, one that allowed Eorzea a fragile peace for centuries to come. The people of Eorzea flourished in the interlude brought upon by this impasse. Other city-states followed in the footsteps of Mhach and Amdapor, crafting their own schools of magic to elevate their civilizations. But progress would come at a cost. These societies, dependent on magic, drew vast amounts of ether from the land, draining it to fuel their grandeur. The consequences, though unseen at the time, were mounting. While each city-state projected an image of harmony, behind closed doors they all continued to refine their own offensive magics. The city of Mhach had turned its gaze towards the void, summoning monstrous Voidsent through forbidden rituals. In response, Amdapor constructed towering guardians, elegant and formidable, stationed throughout their lands as a show of strength. No single event is blamed for igniting the war, But political tensions and military displays escalated rapidly in the mid-13th century, and then the War of the Magi had begun. By the year 1510, the War of the Magi neared its devastating climax. Mhach's forces, bolstered by an army of Voidsent, descended upon the city of Amdapor. Despite its age and fortifications, Amdapor Keep, the first line of defense, quickly fell to the overwhelming demonic tide. With the gates to the city breached, the Mhach announced their arrival with the Grim Herald, the summoning of Diabolos, a high-ranking Voidsent, sent to shatter Amdapor once and for all. But Mhach had gravely underestimated the strength of white magic. In a desperate stand, the mages of Amdapor breathed life into their most powerful stone guardians, now capable of wielding arcane spells as well as their weapons. Together they fought back against Diabolos and his minions, eventually sealing the Void Prince and forcing Mhach to retreat. Though victorious, the victory was hollow. The city had been pushed to its breaking point. 3 centuries of conflict had ravaged the land. The war's magical toll drained the realm of balance, with all the ethereal flow shifting dangerously towards the element of water. This final battle was not the cause of the calamity, but it was the tipping point. The elemental balance had been broken. This would see a massive, far-reaching flood that eventually would sweep over all of Eorzea. This was the Sixth Umbral Calamity. As the damage became undeniable, scholars and mages begged the realm's rulers to cease hostilities and prepare for the greater threat. Etheric readings confirmed it. The calamity was imminent, one of flood and fury. Reluctantly, the city-states agreed to collaborate, forming the first grand companies devoted to civilian protection and disaster response. Each nation, however, took a different approach. The scholars of Nim, still weakened by the plague of the Green Death, launched Operation Maelstrom, deploying its remaining navy to erect wards against the oncoming tides. Mhach had turned its gaze beyond the mountains, far beyond. But that is a tale for another time. Amdapor marshaled its dwindling forces to lead a mass evacuation north, towards the mountains of Apalathia's spine. The city was abandoned, its defenders now dust beneath the waves. Having expended most of their power sealing Diabolos, Amdapor's white mages had little left to combat the rising floodwaters. As the seas claimed both Nim and Mhach, Amdapor too was swallowed whole. The elementals of the forest, silent witnesses to the Amdapori's unchecked exploitation of ether, took it upon themselves to bury the city in thick, enchanted brush, enshrouding its ruins in powerful glamours. Thus, the ancient city was lost to time. Centuries later, however, the Seventh Umbral Calamity would disrupt the elementals' wards, and Amdapor, once long forgotten, began to stir. Today, Amdapor is but a shadow of its former glory. The calamity left the region's earth-aspected ether depleted, allowing a moldering blight to fester amid the ruins. To prevent its spread, Seedseer Raya Osena raised a great ward around the site. But deep within, an ancient evil had begun to awaken. The stone guardians of Amdapor, once protectors of peace, now rise again, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Meanwhile, Amdapor Keep, hidden in plain sight for generations, was finally unsealed. Though the Amdapori people are gone, their constructs remain active, like the dreaded Demon Wall, not a Voidsent, but a golem born of a primal form of Amdapori white magic. These golems would spring to life to intimidate and repel trespassers. These defenses, however, failed to deter the Lambs of Dalamud, a cult who defile the keep for their dark rites. In their madness, they sought to bind a forgotten terror, Anantaboga, one of Mhach's Voidsent weapons from the War of the Magi. In doing so, they also tore open the veil, allowing more and more powerful Voidsent to spill into our world. And so, the legacy of Amdapor continues, not through its people, but through its echoes, its creations, and the darkness they once held at bay.